is tough, but I think worship ministry is actually even more difficult. Every week we're expected to be on our game and bring fresh, creative ideas to the service. And it's just not ourselves that we have to worry about. Our job necessitates that we mobilize an entire army of volunteers who all have jobs and lives outside the church. Again, I'm not telling you who our worship leaders will think that you don't know. If this was an easy job, then anyone could do it. But it's not. I think it's one of the toughest jobs in the world. And maybe that's why Paul, in Colossians 4:17, says, see that you fulfill the ministry that you have received in the Lord. The NIV says, see that you complete the work you have received in the Lord. The Bible has plenty of examples of guys who did just that. Acts 13:36 tells us that David, after he had served the purpose of God in his own generation, fell asleep and was laid with his fathers. I read that go, yeah, that's what I want to do. I just want to serve God in my generation, do what he's called me to do, and then go to be Jesus. That's all I want. That verse sounds so biting, actually. And toward the end of his life, Paul said, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Again, that's what we all want to say. Both men fulfilled their calling. They did what God sent them here on the earth to do. And though it was far from easy, they enjoyed longevity in ministry. The big threat to longevity, I think, is burnout. I think burnout is one of the hardest things to diagnose because to admit it makes us sound weak. And so we bite the bullet, we put our heads down, we work harder. Another reason I think burnout is hard to diagnose is because some of us are addicted to success or approval. Admitting burnout would be tantamount to admitting failure. We can never do that. We're afraid of letting people down, afraid of what they might think of us. The reasons for burnout vary. You may be burned out because you're just working way too many hours, carrying too much responsibility, under too much pressure. Some of you may be burned out because your relationship with your pastor is strained. I know a lot of worship leaders who are in that situation. Maybe your marriage is challenging. Still others may be weighed down by issues related to family, health, finances. So one of the questions that kind of needs to be asked these days, and I find myself, especially this summer, getting this topic a lot. How tired are you? And worship leaders and pastors say that a lot. I'm just tired. Sometimes fatigue is seasonal. It's only natural to feel fatigue the weeks leading up to Easter and Christmas and afterward. Those are intense seasons of ministry and preparation for those of us in ministry. But when they're done, life returns to a more manageable pace, hopefully. During one of Gideon's intense battles, the Bible says that he and his men were weary, exhausted, but they kept up the pursuit. I like that. The New American Standard says that they were weary yet pursuing. That's how I feel a lot of times Christmas and Easter. Weary, but I'm pursuing. I've been weary, but I'm in the fight. Even though the battle was intense, Gideon's men were able to reach down deep. They don't push through their weariness. That's how usually we get through it. And so is your fatigue seasonal? And there's light at the end of the tunnel when the schedule will return to normal pace. You just need to hold out until then. Or do you simply need a break or vacation? I know one worship leader who quit his job after 5 years, and he realized after he went to another church, he thought, gee, maybe I just needed some time off. I didn't get any vacation in 5 years. I go, duh. You've been on a platform every week for 5 years, never took vacation. You know he was entitled to it, never took it. Are you one of those guys who doesn't take vacation? Are you one of those guys who doesn't take all your vacation days? What's up with that? I used to do that like a little bit of a badge of honor. No, I didn't use up all my vacation days. Who was I trying to impress? Being busy for the Lord is like this badge of honor for some of us. Our self-esteem is what was going on with me. My self-esteem, my sense of worth, my significance, pretty wrapped up in my job, what I do. convinced that, we're the only ones who can lead. We can't let go of things, not even for a weekend. Are you driving yourself to exhaustion because you need to feel significant or wanted or needed? Now, asking whether your fatigue is seasonal, after you ask that question, the next question is, are you dangerously tired? Gideon's weariness came and went. Elijah, on the other hand, he was so burned out from doing ministry that he wanted to die. What do you do when your fatigue becomes chronic? How do you know if you're dangerously tired? I'm just going to throw out some symptoms of being dangerously tired. Number one, you're just physically exhausted, and you've been exhausted for some time. Maybe you're not sleeping, or if you are, you never feel rested. Number two, you're out of touch with your emotions, except anger, which you're having, your emotions you're suppressing. You notice you're more irritable than usual. Number three, it's been a while since you've experienced God's presence in a personal, intimate, and meaningful way. Kind of feel, if you're honest with yourself, like you're going through the motions as you lead worship or as you preach. Number four, your spouse tells you work too hard. Your spouse, I think, or kids express a resentment toward the church and ministry because it keeps taking you away. Maybe you're starting to see some serious cracks or communication breakdowns in your marriage. Sin starts to look inviting. You're experiencing temptation more often. Maybe you indulge in escapist fantasies or behavior. Maybe you're even involved in secret sin or affair or addiction. Number five, and lastly, you have this strong urge to run away from everything, especially church. Where you fantasize about quitting your job and doing something else, something easier with your life. Maybe you continually dream about working at church. Or maybe you scan the websites and looking at church job openings. One of the most common questions I get these days is, how can I avoid burnout? I get this a lot from, surprisingly, from some of my younger worship leaders. And I can only think that they're looking at us going, I don't want to end up like that. So I just have 5 suggestions, 5 little tidbits, what I hope is practical advice, and maybe some of you can add some of the things that you've learned along the way. But the first thing I would recommend is to live out your passions. What do you feel most passionate about these days? Well, sometimes when I ask Christians that, first of all, they're like, hey, wait, you're asking about passions? I'm not sure that's okay. And they're really out of touch with what are you passionate about? And do you get to do what you're most passionate about? Do you ever get to do that? Because some of you may be on the verge of burnout because you don't get to do anything you love to do. Hey, you're serving God. If you never get to do something you feel passionate about, your job will become an obligation. Realistically speaking, most of us don't get to do what we want to do all the time. I know there's, most people have jobs that entail lots of things that they don't do. I get that. But every Christian should seek out some viable outlet for your passions. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about carnal passions. I'm referring to those desires that God put in you, the desires of your heart. Those are God-given passions. Those are holy passions. They're part of God's calling on your life. And whether it's songwriting or worship or mission or youth work or helping the poor or, the worst thing you can do is suppress those God-given desires and passions. Stay in touch with your innermost passions. They will make you feel alive if you could lean into them. Now, before healing him, Jesus asked Bartimaeus, he says, what do you want me to do for you? And it maybe seems like an obvious question. Duh, Jesus, he wants you to heal him. don't ask me what my favorite meal is. Ask me what I'm living for these days and what keeps me from doing that. Okay. What are you living for these days? You know what keeps you from doing that. So friends, what are you most passionate about? What is it that you truly desire? And are you able to live into that role? Maybe not full-time, maybe, not full-time, but enough of the time. Are you able to lean into it? If not, what keeps you from living out your passion, your desire? How can you learn more? How can you lean more into your passion? Now, sometimes I get pushback, from Christians when I talk about having more passion. Many of us grew up hearing sermons that condemn our sinful passions, rightly so. But again, this is talking about misdirected passion, carnality, and talking about a holy and wholesome passion. The Bible is dripping with passion. The psalmist wrote, "As the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When I will meet with God." And listen to Paul describe his devotion to Christ. He says, "For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain." He drives the point home just a few pages later when he says, "More than that, I count all things to be lost in view of the surpassing value of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things, but count them rubbish, in order that I may gain Christ." So these are the words of a deeply passionate person. Are you living life, a Christian life, with that much passion? If not, what's keeping you from doing that? Even though Peter the disciple was frighteningly impulsive, a little scary at times, Jesus nicknamed him the Rock and built his church upon him. Now, what in the world did Jesus see in Peter that would engender such trust? Well, I think it was his passion. Because Peter is the one who said to Jesus, "Even if all fall away on account of you, Lord, I never will. Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." Of course, he later denied even knowing Jesus, so he wasn't able to live up to that boastful claim. But it's clear that Peter had a lot of heart. Peter, remember, was the first one to step out of that boat in the middle of the storm, and to walk on those swirling waters toward Jesus. And after the resurrection, we see Peter passionately urging, calling, sinners to repentance. So again, the question I'd like you to consider: what are you passionate about these days? Okay. Just like to give you a couple seconds to think about it, write something down. What are you passionate about these days? The other time that I think this question comes into play, many times I'll get calls for worship leaders wanting to talk about transitions. Boy, I'm going through a transition. I don't know what God has done for me. Need advice. And the first thing I will ask is, do you know what you're passionate about? Because in my life, the transitions that I have made, that's the first question that I would ask. Is like, God, what do you put in me to be passionate about? Because I think those are important things to pay attention to, especially as you try to line up your life with what God is leading you to do. The second bit of advice that I have. Sorry, I'm waiting here. What are you passionate about? Don't stop being an artist just because you work for a church. There is tension, I think, between being an artist and being in ministry, and I certainly felt that tension. I'm basically a songwriter, and I felt like the creative life and the leadership life just did not mix. Those are two completely different things. In fact, I remember, in my 20s, just saying to God, "Okay, you got to help me choose, because I can't do both. I can't be a creative person, like an artist of church, and I can't be a leader, because those are two opposite ends of the brain. Those are two different sides of the brain, and they also, they don't mix. God chooses." And I sense the Lord saying to me, "Well, I'm going to show you how to do both. Trust me, I'm going to show you how to do both." I think it's really hard being an artist and being a leader in the church. For many of you, your art breathes life into your soul. You need to be a musician, creative, or a songwriter. You need that. You need that for your soul. For some of you, I know for me, when I accepted Christ, it was in junior high, and it was about the same time I started to write songs. And so there was this wonderful coming together of my faith and my music about the same time. And for some of you, you need your art to be healthy, just as a healthy person. When was the last time you sat down at the piano and just played? When was the last time that you sat down and just like, yeah? I mean, we're really good at telling other people to practice. Do we? I think this work needs to be a good example for your volunteers. Are you being a musician that you are telling them to be? Matthew 25 is the parable of the talents. And I know that, in Hebrew culture, talents is money, but if you could read it the same way as our concept of talents, you have been given a talent. And like all of God's good gifts, you want to steward that talent. Again, we're really good at telling others this. Or do we do it? I mean, there are people who give their eye teeth to be able to play or sing or to write music or preach like you. So be the artist God called you to be when you came to Christ. Earlier yesterday I talked about being able to ask the question, what is the next step for me spiritually? The other question that I like to ask artists when I work with them is, what is the next step for you artistically? Don't ever stop learning, practicing, working on your craft. Get better at what you do. Be the best artist you can possibly be. Most of us know that you need to keep up. If you're a cello player, you need to keep up your chops, or your violin player, or any kind of instrumentalist or singer. We need to keep up our chops. Are you keeping up your playing chops? What areas would you like to grow in as a musician? As a singer, as a songwriter? Are you making time to practice or create? Again, just try to, don't stop being an artist just because you work for a church. You will not be happy. Obviously, when you learn how to manage your time better. Most of my ministry years were spent working in large churches, very fast-paced environments, and I survived those things by learning how to manage my time. Otherwise, I know that I would not have survived. Specifically, I had to learn 4 important time management skills, and we could probably talk about, for an hour about each one of these, but I'm just going to kind of gloss over them because, I'm sure you've dealt with these. First one is how to delegate. The example of Scripture is when Jethro says to Moses, hey, it's not good for you to be the only one who sits in judgment of the people. Get some other guys to help you with that. Okay? How are you at delegating? It's risky to delegate, I know. There's the time that you have to invest to delegate somebody, to show somebody how to do it. Sometimes we're like, no, it's just easier and quicker if I do it myself. Oh my gosh, stop yourself right there. If you keep doing that, you're going to end up doing everything. You can't. If your ministry is going to grow, you're going to have to keep giving stuff away. If you're going to raise up leaders to do the work of the ministry, equip the saints to the work of the ministry, you've got to give stuff away. And you have to be prepared for that to be able to do what's going to mean for you when you see them do a better job than you. Be prepared for that. And that's a good thing, it's not a bad thing. When people start saying, hey, so-and-so that worshiped this weekend, they did great. You were on vacation. That's not the first thing you want to hear when you walk in the door. But that's okay. It's good. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Don't let your insecurities keep you from delegating to good people. Okay? Put that insecurity aside. The second thing I learned is how to work efficiently, work smarter, not harder. Man, I used to hate to make phone calls, answer emails. Oh gosh, my to-do list is so long, And I realized that in my mind, I was really over-dramatizing how long those things took. tendency that things you don't like to do, you have a tendency to overemphasize those and make them look bigger and harder than they really are. Just do them. Get them over with. In fact, that's kind of what I do is I have to give myself little treats. My to-do list, and I'm like, okay, if I make it through these, then I can go down and get my coffee. Get through them. Just get them out of the way so you can do the stuff you really want to do. But learn to work efficiently. Learn to work smarter, instead of harder. Now, again, we can spend all hour just talking about that, and I can check and give you some tips here and there. But the thing is, what works for me may not work exactly for you. I think we all have to kind of find our way with some of these, and so just do it. Okay? You will actually learn how to do it the more you even just step into it. Learn how to follow through on your administrative chores. This is kind of like the same thing I was talking about here. One thing that so many worship leaders and church leaders fall down on is this responding to volunteers' emails and phone calls. And shame on us. We can't, the way that we respond, the promptness with which we respond to volunteers communicates what we feel about them. Okay? Get that in our heads now. And because I know so many, I hear this all the time. I emailed my worship leader last week about this question, still haven't heard from you. And, or I keep calling him, I don't get this answer. And especially somebody who's trying to get involved in ministry, what does that communicate? So make sure that you try to get back, I try to get back within 24 hours, especially if it's one of my volunteers. Try to get back to them as soon as possible. Don't make them keep emailing you or phoning you or calling you. Try to get back to them as soon as possible. That's just another time management thing. The other thing I have to learn, especially in a fast-paced environment, is how to prioritize. Many of the pastors that I have worked with are idea and work generators. They come back and, there's summer break, and they get like 25 ideas. They come back from a conference and they have a dozen ideas. They just wake up in the morning and they have ideas, and they're all, very eager to tell me about them. And, if you work with somebody like that, you may just feel overwhelmed sometimes, because you not only have your own ideas, you got to do what he's telling you to do. And there are some times when I have just had to stop at the fifth or sixth idea, because I realized, okay, if I do these 5 things, I'm not doing anything else this week. And I had to just speak up and say, okay, you just told me to do this, so I don't know if I can do all of this in one day. I said, can you help me prioritize which one is most important to you? Oh, this one for sure. You can let this one go. Okay. I didn't know that as he was talking to me, that was a priority in his head. I was thinking all of these are urgent and need to be handled right away. And I learned that my pastors don't always communicate the priority, the urgency of something, because that making everything sound urgent. I have to come out and ask, And sometimes, if I go for a couple of days, I can see why I'm not going to get that done. I will say, oh, this is what's going on here. I don't know if this is going to happen in time. Which do you see as the greater priority right now? And this really served me well to help my pastors and whoever I'm working with, to help me clarify this heavy load I'm carrying. Because before I did this, I just felt like I had to accomplish everything. It's like only Superman could do this. And so learn how to prioritize and don't be afraid of asking for help. I love this verse in 2 Corinthians 10:13. In fact, I never even noticed this verse before. It says, but we will not boast beyond limits. How are your limits? It says, but we'll boast only with regard to the area of influence God assigned to us to reach even to you. God, you mean I'm not responsible for everything in the church? You mean I'm not responsible for this, that, or the other? God, you mean I'm only responsible for what you assigned to me? Oh, what is that? Honor your limits. Luke 22:29, Jesus says, I assign to you as my Father assigned to me a kingdom. God is not asking me to do more than what He's assigned me to do. I really had a Savior complex. That was another thing that was behind my workaholic tendencies. I got to do it all. I got to be the Savior of this church, and this worship ministry. It's all on me. That's below me. It is below me. So how about you? Have you taken on too much? Are you honoring your limits? Are you being responsible for more than you need to be? Are you overplaying your gifts? Do you need to be in a smaller church with a slower pace? Having been in fast-paced churches most of my life, I really respected, a couple of staff members that came to me and said, after 2 years, I think I need to be at a smaller church with a slower pace. I came here because of the prestige, and I came here because, I wanted to have a sense that I was being significant, but the truth about it is I need to be in a place that the pace is a little slower. And I applaud decisions like that. Honor your limits. It's okay. Do you need to be in a smaller church with a slower pace? Be careful here, because the problem may not be the church also. That's the thing I'm cautioning about. The church may not be the man who works 70 hours a week. So many cases when I've been mentoring worship leaders and they were talking about being overworked, and they're telling me they're working 60 hours a week, and every time I have asked this question, the answer has been the same. I'll ask, so is it required that you work that often? How many hours would you say the pastor or the elders are asking you to work? 40 to 45. I have never heard a worship leader say, yeah, we've been told we need to work 70 hours a week. So I'm like, so who's really driving you? No one's putting the gun to your head. Oh, there's that much work. Okay, well, we can talk about that. Let's start from square one here. The problem may be you. Okay? In order to live at a sustainable pace, some of us have to also take better care of ourselves. Some of us are neglecting rest. Some of us need to exercise, we need to eat better, need to drink more water, and yet no one can do that for you. You're just going to have to come to a point where, hey, I care about this body that God gave me. In honoring my limits, I need X number of hours of sleep, a night. I need to get to bed on time. I'm not sure why we keep running our bodies like the racehorses. So, personal question. What do you need to start doing now, or stop doing, to ensure that you'll still be in ministry 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now? What do you need to start doing or stop doing now to ensure that you're going to be in ministry? This may be the most important question you meet here this week with, because your longevity hangs in the balance here. I've seen too many worship leaders burn out. They never ask this question. Or if they did, it's way too late. What do you need to start doing or stop doing now? Last point. Deal with your stuff. For most of us, our mid to late 30s is when our stuff, our baggage, all our dysfunctional behavior starts catching up with us. And if you're, in that age group, you know what I mean. We have a choice. Either ignore it or go through whatever purging process we need to go through to get healthy. This is where you start seeing your stuff impact your marriage, your ministry. It's like I thought that was all somebody else's fault. Well, maybe the problem is and one of the first keys to dealing with your stuff is to start noticing and paying attention to your blind spots. This is where, many of us maybe go for counseling, but whether you go for counseling or not, it's time to pay attention to those blind spots, those places in your life that you've been totally oblivious to. Now, what do I mean by blind spot? Well, your blind spots is this dysfunctional part of you that makes living and working with you a real challenge. It's your stuff, your baggage, our besetting sins. Even if you're successful in ministry, it doesn't mean that you're not seriously flawed. Okay? And this is a problem sometimes in fruitful ministry. Oh, God's blessing, everything must be okay. Well, look deeper. Just because, you're successful in ministry does not mean that you are not seriously flawed. And dare I say it, the more successful you are, the more people are impacted by your character flaws. There's just a lot more people to have their toes stepped on by you. And if you think that your preaching skills or your worshiping skills are going to make everyone overlook your shortcomings, well, that's not how it works either. And whether you see them or not, everyone else can see your stuff, your baggage as it plays out in all your relationships. You ignore them at your own risk. Parker Palmer writes that by failing to look at our shadows, it's another way of describing our blind spots, we feed a dangerous delusion that leaders too often indulge, that our efforts are always well-intended, our power is always benign, and the problem is always in those difficult people whom we are trying to lead. Personally speaking, the issue of character was a rude awakening for me. When I first started out in ministry, I encountered people problems. I used to know it's everybody else's fault. Certainly not my fault. But the truth was, more often than not, my own lack of character threatened to undo the very ministry I was trying to build. For starters, I was defensive, insecure, overly sensitive, and perfectionistic. And so early on, I was talking a little bit about this yesterday, I had a colleague pull me aside and say, "We all feel like we have to walk on eggshells around you. Stop being so defensive." And I had no idea that I was having this kind of impact on people. It was a blind spot. And I needed someone to point it out to me. Are we ready for that video? Do you want to hook it up? Okay. There's a video that I'd like to show that I think is a really great portrayal of blind spots. And many times our blind spots are the negative side of a positive trait. If you just want to switch out computers, that'd be great. For example, I am a sensitive person. I pick up vibes easily, and I'm highly tuned in to what's going on below the surface. I love going deep with people. Being sensitive serves me well as a worship leader, a songwriter, as a spiritual director, as a pastor, and artist. But do you see how that can also be a problem? Again, sometimes our blind spots are the negative side, the flip side of a positive trait. In other words, we're just overplaying our strengths. If I'm overly sensitive, I be defensive, self-absorbed. Sometimes our greatest strengths can also be our greatest weaknesses. Other examples, people pleasing. It's okay to be concerned about the needs of others, but it's not okay to become a people pleaser. Someone who's controlled by what others think of you. It's okay to be a strong leader, but it's not okay to dominate all the time. Sometimes strong leaders can be so dominant they come into a room and their presence is so dominant that it shuts everyone else down. Again, we're overplaying for him. Kind of suck the air out of the room. It's not okay to be controlled. Oh, okay. Yes, it's that one, yeah. This is a little humor here. I think it's a great example of blind spots. Oh, sorry. Are we hooked up for sound? Okay. So how can you identify your blind spots? Let's just talk a little bit about that. How can you notice something that you can't see? I mean, that's why it's a blind spot, right? Well, first of all, my suggestion is that you pray about it. You can start praying now. Lord, show me. What are my blind spots? You know? I think that's a prayer that the Lord is going to answer. I can have a guarantee. You pray something like that. That's kind of a dangerous prayer on one hand. But and then watch for opportunities to make better choices. Because when the Lord starts showing you your blind spots, you will have decisions to make. Are you going to fall into those old patterns? Or are you going to start making better choices? For example, if you tend to be a people pleaser with an unhealthy need for approval, you will catch yourself saying something just to please a certain authority figure, and you will stop. Maybe I don't need to say it just to impress this person. Again, we're talking about some deep motivations here. If your blind spot is a defensive spirit and someone criticizes you, and your knee-jerk reaction is, I can defend myself, well, maybe you'll bite your tongue. And it's okay, maybe I should just listen instead of speak right now. If you crave attention, you will stop manipulating conversations to make yourself look good. You know what I mean, right? If you're a control freak, you'll start thinking twice about dominating or policing others. That's how we grow in character, noticing those blind spots and then making different choices. I like when Ephesians 4:15 says that we are to grow up in every way in Christ. I think this is what it really entails. Church work, especially leading a ministry, will grow us up faster than anything I can think of, if we let it. I think a lot of it is paying attention to those blind spots.
Yeah, my friend is disconnected being up here.
Okay.
So I'm going to, what I'll do is maybe I'll try to go back out there, see if the video will load up, and then I'll try.
Okay, do you want to plug me back in there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I think another key to identifying blind spots is to pay special attention to relational conflicts in your life. Because a lot of times these will uncover those blind spots. They offer valuable clues regarding your dysfunctional behavior. Almost all of the relational conflict you will experience in life will be caused by, or at least exacerbated by, your stuff. Those places where we are not like Christ will inevitably create friction points in your relationships. So even next time you experience conflict in church, or in your marriage, or other relationships, maybe just pull back and stop and just honestly ask yourself, is any of this I doing? What is it about me that either caused this or is making it worse? How is my own baggage right now? If anyone confronts you about something, that friend who pulled me aside and looked at me about my defensiveness served me well. It was for my own good. So be the kind of leader who can handle the truth, especially the truth about yourself. Personal question here. Based on what you know about yourself right now, what would you say are your potential blind spots? In what area of your life do you sense God currently working? Are there any character issues God keeps bringing to your attention? Do you see any themes, any patterns? Are you noticing any themes or relational conflicts that you're having? I think those questions really get at the heart of the matter. Now, to close, just last month I saw a movie, a Coen Brothers movie called Hail Caesar. And it's a good movie. I think it came out just this past year. And the movie is about this movie mogul in the 40s. He heads up a major movie. You've seen the movie? And in the 40s. And we watch him go throughout his day, and basically his entire day is devoted to putting out fires and solving problems. And very interestingly, there's three major groups of people that we see him deal with The first one is actors, the artists. And, they are moody, and there's a couple of prima donnas in the group, and they are difficult to work with. And, he's trying to navigate all this, because they're threatening to walk off the set and so forth. And so he's, we see him deal with that. The second group of people that he deals with is the religious leaders of the community, because they are making a film about a Roman soldier who has an encounter with Christ in Roman times, in ancient times. And so they want to make sure that they don't offend anybody's religious sensibilities. So there's one scene where the conversation is it's a sketch. It's really funny. And but you can see him just trying to appease all these people. And then the third group of people in his life is his family. And he's trying to put out fires there with his kids as they come up, and he's trying to balance work and ministry because he's coming home late, he misses dinner, and his wife keeps it warm for him, and he's eating late at night, and so forth. So he's trying to balance. He's got all these plates spinning in the air. And there's a very interesting subtext of the whole movie is he's being offered a job from Lockheed Corporation. And the guy that he meets with assures him, this is a much easier job. You're going to make way more money, and you're not going to miss another dinner. More reasonable hours. You'll have your weekends free, even. And so he's got this in the back of his mind. Wow, I could have this other job, and we're watching this throughout his day. And I'm watching this going, oh my gosh, this is just like being a worship leader and a pastor in church. It's like they could have nailed it, more accurately. And I thought, wow, yeah, we work with artists, and sometimes that can be a challenge. People that we're working with, and we work with leaders, with religious leaders, our pastors, our deacons, the people in our church, and we're trying to serve them, and appease them as well. And then there's the family. Ministry is hard in families, and the hours are odd, and we work on weekends, and so right away we got to navigate. When the kids are old enough to do sports, it's like, okay, who's going to be at the game and so forth, and you might miss a few games, and we just juggle schedules. We deal with the exact same issues. Wow, this sounds so familiar. And at the risk of giving away too much of the story, I still recommend it. It's a very good movie. He decides to stay in his job. And he decides because, the reason is because he feels like he's doing something significant. That's pretty cool. And so I would encourage you with the same thing. It's possible sometimes God calls us out of the ministry, and I never want to undermine that or twist anybody's arm. But at the same time, more often than not, God does just want us to hang in there and, like Paul says, to fight the good fight and to remain true because you are doing something so significant and so important. And I'd like to leave you with this challenge from Hebrews 10:39. And this is actually another verse that I thought, wow, I never knew that was in the Bible. It says, but we are not of those who shrink back and are destroyed, but of those who have faith and preserve their souls. And I like the way that the message puts it. It says, but we are not quitters who lose out. Oh no, we'll stay with it and survive, trusting all the way. So I leave you with that, and knowing that God can lead you and will lead you, and that you are doing something very important and significant. And I want to applaud you and encourage you at the same time to keep the faith and keep the course and complete the work that God has called you to do, and not just shrink back. Go forth boldly. And those who have faith in God, that He's actually going to give us the strength to persevere and preserve. Any questions? Anything that you've learned as far as, has contributed to your longevity in ministry? Anything, open the floor up. Questions or comments? I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. There's no questions or comments. Yeah, very wise of you. Very wise of you. And I think that's the kind of the angle that I feel a lot of these young worship leaders are going after when they ask me, how can I live this? How can I be in ministry with the long haul? It's usually what they put it. I sense that same question, like, wow, it's tough already. I don't know if I can make it 5 years, let alone 25 years. When they realize that I've been in ministry longer than some of them have been on this earth, I'm like, well, I see them. It's like, oh my gosh, can't imagine. Yeah, it is possible. It's hard to very